Hello, everyone. Holly with Reality Sandwich here. Today, I'm joined by my friend Sebastian, and we are going to be chatting a little bit about magic mushrooms. Hey, Sebastian, how's it going?
Hey Holly, thanks for having me. It's going great. I'm excited to tell my story.
Awesome. Well, kick us off. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Where do you live? What's up going on in your life?
Yeah, of course. I am a psychedelic media specialist and writer. So that means I do a lot of writing on psychedelic topics, education, history, all that kind of stuff for media outlets, as well as I do a lot of behind the camera work and behind the computer work, actually recording psychedelic therapy sessions and then, chopping them up for mostly internal use at this point. But yeah, really, really fun way to be kind of engaged with the psychedelic community, but a little bit to the left, not the traditional guide or therapist kind of perspective.
Nice, nice. We have a lot in common in this way. Love it. Well, so where did your curiosity about psychedelics begin? Like, at what point in your life you're like, okay, these are cool. I would like to study them or try them?
No, that's a fair question. I would say it kind of stemmed because I am a native Coloradan. I went to school in New York at Colgate University, but I actually came back here to Colorado. Love the Denver metro area. It's where I'm from. It's where I am now. And part of that is there's really easy access to marijuana. Just kind of in general, it's a really old thing at this point around here. I think it's about a decade old, the legislation at this point, which is crazy to think about. Um, but yeah, the marijuana was definitely my first introduction into the psychoactive world in like my last year of high school. Kind of just, the very basic becoming an adult mental psychoactive explorations, along with as I got into college, starting to drink and all that kind of stuff. Um, but my first truly psychedelic experience, while it was kind of like my world was opened up and definitely like primed to it because of my experiences with marijuana. But my first truly psychedelic experience was with LSD. That would be in college. It was like during all our fall break actually, and it was a third of a tab of Dutch acid. It was one of the kids that was in our class went to a French high school or something and did a lot of traveling in Europe. So he had like legitimate Dutch acid. So we all took a third of a tab, and it just absolutely blew my mind. I was basically not convinced to do it, but the psychedelic process, was explained to me a little bit more by my best friend. He's still my best friend, gonna be my best man actually. He had in high school a 5 tab acid trip that he just kind of like he and his friends kind of plowed through a little bit recklessly, not really knowing what they were doing, but that they survived, and that experience informed a lot of kind of how I went into the psychedelic world, which was it was nice to have just a little bit of, hey, here's what you definitely shouldn't do, more than anything else.
Yeah, we always want a friend that's a guinea pig, right? Like, hey, thanks for checking this out first.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because I am the friend that is a guinea pig for so many people. So it's funny to think about my guinea pig too.
Yeah, every guinea pig has a guinea pig somewhere.
Exactly. Exactly. So
Okay.
no, he definitely opened that door for me. He was like, yeah, this is sick. You should try it out. So we did that, had an amazing time. And we would spend college doing a decent amount of psychedelics every so often. Very, hippie crowd in that kind of way. But I actually graduated last May in 2023. And I was basically just pushed into the psychedelic pool, basically, without really realizing what was going on. I ended up getting my degree in theater. I did a lot of work in college with media production, like hands-on experience with that kind of thing and event production. And I ended up getting grabbed by the Umaway Cannabis Company, actually.
Hmm.
As soon as I came out of school and came back here to Denver, um, I was just kind of applying for a very general graphic design, social media position with them. And when I went in for my interview, the owner actually asked me if I had any experience with psychedelics. And I was like, well, I absolutely do, actually, because not only did I have all that, um, recreational, we'll call it, experience, I completed most of a neuroscience degree as well. I would have gotten a minor, but our program didn't have that, so I'm just kind of out of luck. But I did complete a ton of neuroscience work and research, and I actually wrote a lot of different papers on psychedelics. Specifically, my favorites were I did a cultural review, almost like in a first person perspective of the Weekle peyote religion. So that was really that, and that was one of my first real like academic dives in. And I actually did some stuff with LSD and alcoholism too, a couple like comparative
Mm.
research studies. So I went in with a lot of information and knowledge about how psychedelics can be used in a therapeutic sense, kind of how they've been studied for the past, really since in a legitimate way since the 1950s, and has been kind of covered up by a lot of political events in between then and now. But I am pretty well versed in that kind of stuff, so I was able to, get a lot to her, and she was like, "All right, I want you to make me a podcast that like is just psychedelic education, just like straight up letting people know what are psychedelics, how do you use them historically, culturally, where do they come from." So I ended up doing all of the like designing, scripting, directing, shooting, all that kind of stuff, other than editing, for Cheshire Corners. That was like a Yuma Way based property that I developed for them, and that was kind of my foray into the psychedelic industry here in Denver. And through that, I've been able to parlay that into some positions with Shroomski Magazine, which is like a prominent outlet coming on the rise, media outlet, as well as the Center for Medicinal Mindfulness. It's a therapy center out in Boulder. I've done some consulting work for Psy Worldwide as well, a visionary art website. So it really opened the door for a lot of really interesting possibilities that I never would have tried to seek out when I was graduating college. I was just like, I want to do something with art and media, and I've got a resume that's a little bit more geared towards video, even though I'm a little better at, I got my degree in theater. I really like being in live productions and that kind of thing, but the demand for video media is a little higher, and it was better. My resume looked a little bit better for that, so I just wanted something. I was never imagining that I would be in this kind of in this business, but it's really fun. I can't complain at all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a cool place to be. I worked in the cannabis industry for a very long time. I still do, but psychedelics are the new cannabis, and so it's really fun to just be on the watching all of it unfold and helping share people's stories. Which, speaking of, I'm excited to hear about your latest mushroom journey. So let's get into it. Paint a picture for us. Tell us about this experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So this this journey comes with a little bit of history. So while I was working at Cheshire Corners doing this whole YouTube show based on psychedelic education, I encountered a lot of fun individuals, specifically in like the Denver psychedelic history world. One of whom is Travis Tyler Fluck. He was actually like his home, his house that he lived there for like a long time. He just moved actually. But that home is where like Prop 122 and the decriminalization movement was started and was kind of like pushed forward from there. And so he's a really key central figure in kind of how local decriminalization has moved in the Denver universe for sure. And he's also a very avid and skilled mushroom grower, of course. His pride and joy is, he abides by all the Prop 122 stuff about gifting and that kind of thing. With his friends, he's definitely just cool about sharing what he's created, because he's really diligent about letting the mushroom grow as it wants to, giving it a lot of respect as an organism. Very, spiritually oriented kind of path towards growing mushrooms, which I think is really interesting, and I've never really seen before. And it certainly works because he grows some crazy strong mushrooms. It's like they're genetics he got from Amazonian penis envies, and these things were like glowing blue from psilocybin. I'm telling you, like they were nuts. I didn't know this at the time that I took them, but another one of my like friends in the sphere, his name's Wes. He's now on the board for the Psychedelic Club of Denver. but he's really good friends with Travis. And I was talking to him about my trip, and he was like, yeah, man, I mean, those are like 70 micrograms a gram. Like, those are really strong mushrooms. So I took like, 4 grams. um, it was, let's see, it was, I want to say like February 2023, I believe. Or no, February 2024. Yeah, it would have been like the beginning of this year. The Barbie movie hype was like just kind of, we're coming off of that. That'll be relevant later, because it was a key part of the trip. But we were kind of just coming off that. Winter was setting in, and me and my fiance and one of her best friends, they wanted to do like a mushroom trip, and I was like, all right, I'll join you. I think mushrooms always fun. I hadn't tripped in a few months before that, and so it was very like, all right, it's probably a good time for it. I don't have anything else to do. And I, because of my line of work and the people I kind of encounter, I get gifted a lot of different mushrooms. I get a lot of different varieties, strains, all that kind of stuff. So I made kind of a blend for them, just a very, very basic, some strong, some weak, some, nothing insane. Very much like, I want these guys to not, want to peel their faces off. Like, I want them to have a good time. And for me, I was like, man, I know these are crazy mushrooms from Travis. And like, it feels almost disrespectful to not take them all at once, especially because Travis is like a huge advocate of the hero dose and that whole, world, that whole side of tripping. So it was very like, it feels like I really should take these all at once. So I did, and we all bottoms up. I'm a big advocate of teching personally, in part because I cannot stand eating mushrooms. I just can't do it. So grinding them up, soaking them in orange juice or lemonade. I think we did lemonade that time, but orange juice is scientifically a little bit better. Fun fact: the ascorbic acid's a little bit better than the citric acid, but Anyways, we do a little soak, bottoms up, same old, same old. And
Did your fiance and her friend take the same dose, or were you the only one like going deep?
I was the only one at like a 4 gram dose.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did like between 3.5 and 4 grams, and they did probably 2 grams, like half that. Like, okay. They had a much different, much better time.
Got it. Okay.
But it was I wouldn't even say it was a bad time. We'll get into that though. So trip comes up, very normal, very, starting to experience the euphoric, like rising feeling of the mushrooms and the psychedelic effect is coming. We started out by watching, and this is where the Barbie stuff comes in, because we had just watched the Barbie movie many, many times. My fiance is actually a Barbie collector. Like, she has the earring magic Ken, and like she's the real deal. So we watched that movie probably a dozen times in the course of that 6-month period, and we this trip, for some reason, we started out by watching the old Barbie movies, like the animated ones from the early and late 90s to like mid 2000s, that kind of era. And we were just cackling, like cracking up, because these movies don't have a great plot. Like, especially, I believe it's Barbie and the Magic Princess. I just remember the villains. Yeah, it's Barbie and the Magic Princess, because the villain's name is Wenlock. And there was this random thing that still gets quoted to this day where, like, my fiance's friend was, she had 2 friends there. We had one from in-state, one was like her best friend from childhood out of state. So the 2 friends were like sharing ice cream, and the the Coloradan friend kind of like took the ice cream, more to their side rather than in the middle. And the of course the movie's playing. The villain has like a song, I think, or something that's on screen. Like, he's prominently featured. And the Floridian friend, the one from out of state, she looks at the Coloradan friend and says, "You have a heart of Wenlock." And no real context for what that meant, other than like, how dare you take my ice cream? But we were just dying, and to this day that still gets quoted by the 4 of us like all the time. Um, so yeah, that
A
was
permanent inside joke. I love when those come about.
exactly. To me, that's what psychedelics are really best for. If you have some friends that you love sharing inside jokes with, you will have tons if you trip together. Tons. Um,
Yeah, it's your own little universe going on. It's fun.
oh, totally, totally. So yeah, we get through that, and then one more Barbie movie, and I think, and then we're now like 2 hours in, so like full swing of the trip. They're in a more giggly, bubbly world. Like they've, if we're talking levels, we kind of all got here together about 1.5, 2 hours in, and they stayed in this giggly, floaty area, and I kept going up and up and up, and I was starting to. I wasn't starting to like get weird at this point, but I was definitely like holding on to my seat a little bit, like, oh my god, this is so much psilocybin. This is more than's been in my brain before. Like, ah. Um, so that was, that was something. It was just very, I wouldn't say it was quite an overwhelming elevator experience because, in my opinion, MDMA actually has a much more overwhelming, like, rise in your chest elevator experience. So I wouldn't classify it like that, but it was certainly very existentially intense to the point where it was like looking around and sorry, my cats are the worst. Looking around in both
Mine are
like
everywhere too. I feel you.
um yeah, very much looking around and like almost disassociating with myself, being pulled back in, having like a cycle of like, super existential ego death related feelings, along with like, I'm with the group and we're all giggling and watching a movie that was kind of like grinding up against each other. And it really came to a head when the all the cartoon Barbie movies, we ran out of the good ones, and they were like, let's watch the Barbie movie. Let's, the one that just came out. Let's do it. We're on mushrooms. We haven't done that. Da 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 da. Of course, this is kind of where we're heading. And the movie starts. Great movie. It gets to the point where it's our first introduction to Barbie Land, and it's Margot Robbie's first look in the movie. And she's all done up and she's walking along all the Barbies. Hey Barbie, hey Barbie. That whole scene. So as you'll recall, my fiance is a very avid Barbie collector. So she actually has a lot of the Barbies from the movie. She's missing only one or two, I think. And when this point in the movie comes on, she looks at her friends and she says, "Oh my god, I actually have this Barbie." And she runs into the bedroom and runs out with the Margot Robbie Barbie in the same outfit as the one on screen. And I like very distinctly remember like her standing in front of like our flat screen, like holding up the Barbie and like seeing the Barbie's face and like its outfit, and then like looking over and seeing Margot Robbie like exactly the same, like exactly the same look, like the look on her face was the same too. And I was like, like I just couldn't handle it. Like, that's the point when my brain was just like, oh my god, like I can't even properly describe what I was feeling beyond like overwhelmed at the existential nature of life and existence. Like that's really all I could describe
The
it as.
lines are blurring between reality and television right now.
Totally. Just in like a vortex of like depersonalized ego death almost. So I start, not quite freaking out, but definitely like, oh my god, like, is this real? What's reality? I don't know what's going on. Like, just very like that almost, that panicky swirl. And I ended up informing my comrades in the most calm way I could of just, I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something along the lines of like, I am not doing great, guys. Like, things are not okay right now. And someone suggested that I go lay on some tile. So I ended up going and laying face down on my tiled kitchen floor, closing my eyes and just feeling like almost spinning around myself, like my spirit spinning in and out of my body almost. As I was trying to like stabilize and like hold on to the ground. And I remember my fiance coming over and she was like holding my hands. And I was like repeatedly asking her like, am I okay? Like, is this real? Is this okay? Am I okay? Is this real? Just like very that kind of question over and over, just in this loop of like questioning the nature of reality, my identity, my place in reality, very like ejected from anything that had to do with this material plane. Very crazy out of body, because I've experienced ego death before, because I've eaten an eighth of mushrooms, so 3.5 grams of mushrooms before, and I've experienced like intense stuff like this, intense ego death related feelings like this, but this was so far beyond. Like this was so, maybe it was just because there was more psilocybin. I mean, totally possible, you know. But this was. I even remember texting Travis, being like, "Man, there's got to be something different with like the some of the other tryptamines, and you know, there because there's a lot of in magic mushrooms. There's a lot of alkaloids, which are like
Mhm.
plant chemicals, basically, that are that you eat and consume with the psilocybin, that a lot of people kind of contribute to actually having an effect on the trip. So I was trying to communicate to him like, I think there's some crazy weird, you know, extra chemical in here, because that was like an astral plane spiritual experience that knocked me out of existence. He didn't, you know, he was basically like, it's just a ton of psilocybin. But to this day, it definitely helped influence some of my feelings on how we should value and approach the different strains of magic mushrooms, and how we should try to learn more about these alkaloids, these tryptamines. Like baeocystin is the one that's getting the most attention right now. Um, so having that kind of, you know, having that kind of like, not like, oh, these are poison mushrooms, but like, you know, these are crazy mushrooms. Having that kind of perspective, it helped calm me down like a little bit. I was still kind of on the floor, but I eventually picked myself up, and my fiance helped me get into bed. I just like laid down. I watched some. I remember specifically Bob's Burgers, like just very specifically because,
Comfort food, just some
oh,
comfort food TV.
exactly, like it's playing in our house almost 24/7. So it was exactly that comfort food TV of just like, okay, I know what's gonna happen next there.
No
I had like,
surprises.
yeah, I had like a Gatorade or something, a little snack, just a little, you know, calm down. It was like, okay, everything's okay. Like, um, my fiance ended up coming back and forth a couple of times, just like checking on me. She and I were talking, then she'd go back to the group, that whole thing. And the whole experience like settled out, calmed down. I very much, it felt like I was landing a rocket ship in bed for sure. Like, and I got a lot of, I've been getting a lot more of this lately. I got a lot of physical feeling of relief. Like as I was laying down, and as like the psilocybin was exiting my system a little bit more, like I could feel that the psychedelics had almost like um given me like a massage, like, you know. And obviously I mean that more metaphysically, mentally, in a consciousness perspective, but I could feel the physical effects of it almost in my legs specifically. I actually had a recent LSD trip that I had a lot of similar feelings of that kind of release of physical pain, of physical tension, of that kind of thing. And so I had a lot of that as I was kind of like sinking into the bed, and the psilocybin is like rushing out of my head. And eventually, one of the friends leaves, the other one's staying with us. She goes to bed. And it's just me and my fiance in bed, and everything. It's just settled and calm, and everything is okay. We're just watching cartoons, relaxing. We go to bed. Wake up the next day, and obviously I'm fine. And I'm even looking back on it, thinking like, wow, that super intense, like on the floor moment, I don't even think it was necessarily bad. I think it was insane and necessary. I don't think it's something that I view as like a bad trip, because it ended fine. It ended great. It was very easy to, you know, it felt more like a rocket launch that had something go wrong mid-flight, but you were still able to land the ship. That's what it really felt like. Instead of it kind of blowing up in midair, everyone having to abort mission, whatever. Um, it felt like something had gone a little bit wrong, but it felt like we learned from it, and everything was okay now, and we had really landed the ship in a cool, real way. So it was, yeah, it's definitely a trip that I I think about, I think more than other trips, just because of the intensity, of course. But also, I learned a lot. And at that point, I was very convinced that because I had dozens, probably almost, yeah, dozens, maybe over 100 at this point, psychedelic experiences in my life. Um, I was very convinced that having a bad trip, quote unquote, really has to do mostly with your mindset going into the trip. If you know, are in a mindset where you're like, I'm going to enjoy this no matter what, this is going to be a good experience, da 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 da. I truly wholeheartedly believe that if you go in with that kind of mindset, there's no psychedelic substance that can really catch you off guard. My problem here is I went in not thinking these weren't strong mushrooms, but definitely underestimating my own capability. So I was like,
Yep.
oh, I'm a veteran at this point. Like I've done, I've ego deaths. I've done an eighth of a, I've done 3.5 grams of mushrooms. Like I've done these achievements that you're supposed to get. You know what I mean? In the
And you're
terms of
set and settings chill, you're like all the things are in
exactly,
place.
exactly.
Like,
Like I was very much known as, not only am I, the only person in my friend group or family or whatever that's working in psychedelic media, but I'm one of the few that's like versed, well versed in psychoactive materials, medicines, all that kind of stuff. So there's also like almost a group expectation of like, oh, he's got this, it's good, it's cool. He's our in-house journey, clinician almost, like in a very,
guinea
very
pig for the guinea pigs.
exactly, exactly, in a very like friends only kind of way. So I really went in with that mindset of like, oh, this is gonna be, one more of the same. Not to be like, oh, all mushroom trips are the same, but more just like I know what's gonna come. I know how to handle this. I know what to expect. I was definitely like rocked out of my skull. So it I feel like it refreshed in my mind that um, almost value of needing to go in expecting literally anything and being okay with that. Because I feel like more veteran psychonauts, we can get to a point where we're like, um, obviously I'm going to have a good mindset and positive mindset going in, and I'm excited about this, but I also am excited because I kind of know what to expect. And if what you expect doesn't happen, that can kind of really throw off the pattern, velocity, whatever of your trip. Um, so I guess it should really more than anything serve as a reminder to veteran psychonauts to like, you should always be prepared for anything when you're kind of getting in that intergalactic vehicle with whatever the substance is, because it's always going to take you on a ride that you really can't expect, even if you have been almost training to expect the unexpected at this point.
Yeah, great. I've gotten surprised a few times. I'm like, wow, that dose was different this time. Okay, I guess I got what I needed there, but wasn't expecting that.
No,
Yeah.
totally.
Oh, well, awesome. I love this story. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. And yeah, do you think, my last question then, do you think you will take 4 grams of mushrooms again anytime soon?
um God, that's a good question. Anytime soon? No, not. I don't have any pressing need to do that kind of thing again. And it actually, I after that I didn't trip for like 6 months or something. It was one of my bigger pauses. Not that I trip very often, once every few months, but that to a half a year is not nothing. Either way, it definitely not scared me off of psychedelics for a second, but it definitely like made me realign a little bit and be like, whoa, need to be a little bit more respectful. Need to be a little bit more like, need to go in this, doing the right thing, going in the right direction. So in the immediate future, no, definitely not. But it's not something that I would never do again, especially in the right circumstances. I'm actually writing an article on the McKenna brothers right now, and a big part of their history is about eating fresh mushrooms in the Amazonian jungle. Like that was a huge experience for them. So in that kind of circumstance, definitely I would be trying to maximize the experience of something that significant, that culturally significant as well. Um, so I would say it's not out of the question, but it's not something that I'm going to wade into as flippantly. We'll put it at that.
Perfect. You'll wait till you're called. You'll know when the next time is right.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate connecting today, and thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Holly. I appreciate being able to share.